United Lutheran Seminary presents the Seminary Explores podcast, conversations on faith, art, people, politics, theology, life, and more, with voices from around the corner and around the globe.
What can we do about Iran? Hello, this is Jerry Christensen, and it's the Seminary Explores with our guest today, the Reverend Sandra Mackey, who is a spiritual director at Ruth House in Gettysburg, obviously an ordained pastor in the Lutheran Church, and who was, I'm pleased to say, the recipient of a Lifetime Peacemaker Award just recently from the Interfaith Center for Peace and Justice for a life filled with peacemaking. What led you in the first place, Sandra, to visit Iran, especially as a Christian? This is a Muslim nation. What brought this about?
Well, as the 20th century philosopher Grace Lee Boggs said, you're not going to transform something unless you love it. And so I say, you're not going to love something unless you know and understand it. Anyone who seeks to transform the world, who seeks peace and goodwill in the world, must first know and understand people of the world. Especially, I believe, the people who have been painted with broad strokes as being uncivilized, inhospitable, or even violent. It is essential and to understand other people if one wants to be able to transfer the world into a peaceful world where all God's people may prosper and be blessed with lifelong happiness. And so, I have begun a late-in-life emphasis on travel. A few of the more interesting places to which I have traveled are Cuba, Palestine, and Iran. I have enjoyed travel to Iran because, well, the country and the people are absolutely the 180-degree opposite of what many Western people believe them to be. Many people in the West think of Iranian people as Arabs. They are not. And many people think that all Iranian people are terrorists, members of the axis of evil, as one American president has labeled them. But the Iranian people, as I have come to know them, are anything but terrorists. They are lovely, family-centered people who extend warm hospitality to all visitors. In fact, they welcome the stranger in the tradition of Jesus, who for Shia Muslims is most revered as the second greatest prophet ever, second only to the prophet Muhammad.
Well, from all of this, what do you think we can learn, even if we don't have ourselves a chance to visit Iran, yes. Thank you.
Yes. We Americans, I believe, could learn a lesson from the people in the Middle East in general, but definitely from the Iranian people. Middle Eastern people understand that there's a difference between a people and their government. They understand, for instance, that a president does not necessarily represent a whole people. Therefore, people in Iran welcome American visitors literally with open arms, no matter who our president happens to be at the time of the visit.
But then it strikes me that the follow-up question would have to be, assuming that understanding people, which you have kind of outlined as your thesis, is basic to making peace. How do people like you and me go about understanding the Iranian people?
Yes, so how should we Americans understand the Iranian people? Good question. Well, first, we should understand that Iranian people are the same as people anywhere. And we should understand that Iranian people, like people everywhere, want to live in peace with security. They want to have health care and education for their children, and they want work with purpose and freedom of religion. Now that I have traveled to Iran, I can say with great certainty that the people of Iran want the same things that people everywhere want. But to understand the Iranian people more deeply, one must first know a little bit about their long, rich history.
Well, now that, as a historian, you'll forgive me, this is the part I'm really going to get interested in. Tell us something more about that long, rich history.
Well, I'm not one, as you may know from when I was in class with you, Dr. Christensen, I'm not one on numbers and years, but I do have a couple of little numbers. The recorded history of Persia spans more than 2,500 years and brings us up to the modern-day Islamic Republic of Iran. But the earliest reports of human settlements in the area go back at least 10,000 years. Scholars tell us that layers of civilizations and tens of thousands of archaeological sites are still buried in the deserts and upon the mountains of Iran. Many, many sites that are yet to be discovered certainly have not yet been explored. This is one of the reasons for the national pride that so frequently is encountered by anyone who visits Iran. The long, rich history of the Persian people is a source of great pride for contemporary Iranians. This Iranian culture, one of the oldest continual cultures in the world, is filled with complex relationships. So, Jerry, if one were to draw lines from the Mediterranean to Beijing to Cairo, or Paris to Delhi in India, these lines would all pass right through Iran. Iran lies in the intersection of trade routes and in the middle of a region that has seen wars, invasions, and occupations throughout its long history. The Persian people historically have suffered very greatly under some of these occupations. The Persian people were not at all immune to this turmoil, and so this country was always being overrun by one invader or another throughout its long history.
Tell us a little bit more about the Persian Empire. We really haven't completed that yet. We know very well that the Persians were there long before so many of our Western cultures were even discovered, and dominated the world for a time, and that it is quite distinct from the Arab cultures. So tell us a little bit more about that empire.
Yes, well, the Persian Empire was established and lost and then reestablished a number of times before finally being brought down, really humiliated, by the Arabs in the 7th century. The Arabs, motivated by a zeal for the new religion of Islam, humbled that great Persian Empire and brought about a time of Muslim identity that has become distinctly Persian. When the Arabs invaded and Iran was converted to Islam, the Iranians always try to maintain their identity. And so Iranians became Shia Muslims. Thus, they are Persian Muslims, not like Arabs who are Sunni. But one of the most glorious sites I visited in Iran is the ruins of Persepolis in the desert of southern Iran, which stands as a reminder of that glorious Persian past that you speak of. Persepolis, which literally means the city of Persia, was the capital of the Persian Empire. When one visits the ruins, one will notice the absence of violent imagery on what's left of the ancient walls. Among the carvings, one can see soldiers, but remarkably, the thing to see is that even though the soldiers carry weapons, the weapons are not drawn. Instead, one sees images of people from different nations gathering peacefully, bringing gifts to bear for the emperor, soldiers putting their hands amicably on one another's shoulders. And so we see that in an era of history that might be noted for its breathtaking barbarity, Persepolis seemed to be a cosmopolitan place. Today, its ruins are an important reminder to the Iranian people of who their enlightened Persian ancestors were. The legacy of this ancient empire, which was the largest and most powerful kingdom on earth to that point in time, is regarded by many historians to be the most benevolent empire in history. It was an empire that, under Cyrus the Great, sent the enslaved Jews from Babylonia back to Jerusalem to build their temple in 6th century BC, and that they went back with money that Cyrus gave them. The Cyrus cylinder, Iran's most celebrated ancient artifact, has set forth principles of freedom and human rights for the people. The cylinder predates the Magna Carta by approximately 2,000 years.
What can we do with Iran in the modern age? I'm asking that question of our guest today, the Reverend Sandra Mackey, who is spiritual director at Ruth House, and we're very pleased to say the recipient of a Lifetime Peacemaker Award from the Interfaith Center for Peace and Justice. She's sharing her reflections on Iran then and now with us here on the Seminary Explorers. And now, let me ask, how does all of what you've said so far about its history, its people, its culture, how's that affecting the people of Iran today?
Well, the people of modern-day Iran see themselves as Persian, Islamic, and more than ever as Western. I saw evidence of this on both of my trips in 2007 and 2011. In fact, the New York Times recently ran an extensive article on the trend for young people in Iran to have weddings in large venues just outside of Tehran, outside the city. The private receptions are much like receptions here in the States, with DJs playing loud, modern music and men and women in Western clothing dancing together under flashing lights. It is a joy to see. But whenever one travels in Iran, in large cities and small towns, in neighborhoods rich or poor, one sees that people maintain beautiful gardens with fruit trees and flowers, with fountains and aviaries. For the Iranian people, the beauty of nature is so very important. So even in small towns where the modern world has not caught up to the culture and the people, and where people live in poverty, even there one will see beautiful rose gardens. Why, you ask?
Yeah, well, exactly. Why? Why?
Well, because the Iranian people see roses as a symbol of a desire for peace and goodwill. They see rose gardens as a statement of a preference for renewal, their own personal renewal as well as cultural. They see that through the natural beauty, not over accumulation of material possessions or power.
And what then about, and here's a critical question, what about Persian culture and society today, i.e. nuclear program, attitude toward the West, etc.?
Yes. Well, first I would mention that the city of Shiraz in the south of Iran is considered to be the capital of Persian culture and the most progressive city in the country, a place where Westerners would feel very comfortable. It's home to Persian poets. Because poets are the most celebrated people in Iran, many people go to Shiraz to visit. And it's full of beautiful gardens and young people just enjoying each other's company, reading poetry, and having a good time. One of the reasons ancient poets are so revered was because for many years they would speak for the people in a coded language during times of foreign occupation. And they were often the very people who kept Farsi, the Persian language, alive through all these centuries. Farsi is one of the oldest of the living languages and is still spoken in modern Iran. Unfortunately, though, today, people generally in the West know very little about Iranian people or culture beyond the last 40 years since the infamous 1979 Islamic Revolution. Most Westerners know only the hardline government that taunts the Western powers, and they know the tensions over Iran's nuclear program.
And in that light, what do we need to know now about the West's relationship with Iran?
Well, for Americans, it's really important to know the history of tensions between Iran and the West. It started in 1953. When the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, known today as British Petroleum, or BP, worked through the British government to engage the U.S. government, under President Eisenhower, to overthrow Iran's democratically elected Prime Minister, Dr. Mohammad Mossadegh. Mossadegh had decided that Iranian resources should benefit Iranian people. He kicked out the British and nationalized the oil business. The U.S. was persuaded to stage a CIA-backed coup to displace Mossadegh. It was the first of its kind, unfortunately not the last. The U.S. put in place the Shah, the king, who was very repressive towards the Iranian people. He remained in power from 1953 until the Islamic Revolution in 1979. Iranian people believe that without Western interference, they today would have a democratic system in place. In fact, one of the great hopes of the Iranian people to this day is to have a strong electoral democratic system that would guarantee their own personal individual rights and freedoms. Anyone who would want to read the story of the root of these tensions could read the book All the Shah's Men by the award-winning journalist Stephen Kinzer. It's a very good read. Kinzer.
And the title again is
All the Shah's Men.
All the Shah's Men, a
Yes.
takeoff on All the King's Men, I imagine.
Yes.
In that light, what's, now that you've traveled there and studied, what's the one thing that you would like us to remember? What's the one thing you remember about the Iranian people?
Well, one thing that I will always remember about the Iranian people would probably surprise American people, and that is to know that the Iranian people in general are not very religious. They have a beautiful spirit, but they want to break loose from the religion of the conservative Islamic government. They long for the freedoms we enjoy in the West, and they live in the hope of that freedom. They continue to take to the streets to obtain those freedoms, knowing that their protests against the government might very well cost them their lives. Here in America, I long for the day that the U.S. government will take positive steps to help the Iranian people, and people around the world, really, in their struggle for freedom from oppression. So again, I would remind people that Grace Lee Boggs says, "You're not going to transform something unless you love it." And that I say, you are not going to love something unless you understand it. And so I have begun this journey in order to know the world and to do my little bit to help transform it. From war to peace, from fear to love, and from ignorance to an embrace of all God's people. That is the world that I hope to see.
What is the thing we can do? Travel is one of the ways you've done this. Not all of us are going to be able to travel to Iran or to the Mideast. Reading books, watching programs on Iran. On Iran? Sorry, I'm a Midwesterner. I just can't get around that other pronunciation. Reading books, travel. Travel isn't easy. Nowadays, it's a little harder, even probably than you went. Reading books, watching television, seeing certain kinds of. How do we get to know the people of Iran at a distance?
For me, as a person of faith, my prayer always is that I maintain a heart that's open. And that if I understand human nature as God has given it to us, that if we get past our fear, because when we are fearful, people in power can easily manipulate us. If we can get past our fear and understand that people are people everywhere, whether they live in Iran or China or North Korea, that we all want the same things, that we all want to live in peace, and that we don't want to fear the other. But that's really the most important thing, is to have an open heart, and that's what helps us to understand other people. The other thing that I like to do is read stories, because it's through stories that we come to understand one another. And if you're walking down the street and you see somebody that you think is not really friendly or seems to be preoccupied, do you ever stop and wonder, I wonder what they're going through right now? If we understand one another in this light, that we all have tragedy and joys in our lives, then we can begin to understand people around the world.
I get the feeling there's a strong connection between you as a longtime spiritual director and your interest in peacemaking in the world.
Well, I do believe that God has created people to have life abundantly. And when we're dropping bombs and spending all of our money on war and military, that does not help us as God's creatures to live life abundantly.
Sandra Mackey is our guest today, a spiritual director of Ruth House in Gettysburg, recipient of the Lifetime Peacemaker Award from the Interfaith Center for Peace and Justice. And we've talked about what can we do today about Iran and other places where peace is so desperately needed in the world. I'm Jerry Christensen for the Seminary Explorers. Have a very good day.
You have been listening to The Seminary Explorers, a production of United Lutheran Seminary with campuses in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We invite you to visit our website at unitedlutheranseminary.edu. Opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of United Lutheran Seminary or the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America.